Mindfulness, being present. To the ordinary man or woman, these are phrases often overlooked, but to one woman, they mean more than you could ever know. That woman is Dr. Ann Friedman, and tonight she sits down with us to explain just what those concepts mean. Tonight you will take a journey into your own mind, venture deeper into the inner workings of your consciousness, and enjoy a conversation that can only occur right now, right here, during the Midnight Variety Hour.
You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind.
With the emergence of global internet, a human population of several billions, an electronic noosphere, that we are now within the shadow of this transcendental object at the end of time.
I find it a little difficult to say what the subject matter is going to be, because
Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
Steps back, three-pointer, bang!
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the Midnight Variety Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Tom.
And I'm Adam.
And we're here today with an amazing guest. This is a woman that I've met a few times before. Adam knows her a lot better than I do, but regardless, so many questions to ask today. We're here with Dr. Ann Friedman. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. We started this podcast, about a little over 3 months ago now, probably
Yep,
at this
just
point,
about.
right? And you were actually one of the original people that we said we wanted to talk to when we were thinking about, okay, well, we want to do a podcast. We want to talk to interesting people who do interesting things with their lives or work in interesting fields or have interesting hobbies. And Adam goes, we should have Ann on. And I was like, yeah, we probably should. So, Ann, thank you for coming on the show. How's everyone feeling today? Adam, how are you?
Yeah, I'm extremely happy to have Ann in here. I'm so grateful that she's taking time out of your day to come in, talk with us, and spread the word of mindfulness and meditation, because it's an important part of my life. And when I try to, talk about it with other people, I don't want to, come across as like trying to, be preachy or whatever. And so if someone's not interested into it or just doesn't really care too much about it, I'm not going to spend time, telling about my journey and what I've done and stuff. But I will have an occasional feel like my grandmother, she loves hearing about what I do with that. She'll talk with me about it and other people. But, it's one of those topics that some people consider it woo-woo. Some people don't know really anything about it. And so we're happy to have you here and to spread the word. It's amazing. So.
Well, I'm honored, and how dear of you to put me on the list early on.
Well, yeah.
It's been a journey for me, and it changed my life, and that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe what you do? To just like, if you met a random person on the street or in an elevator and they go, oh, what do you do for a living? What would you say you do?
Yes, I teach mindfulness, and I'm certified to do so. I'm also a psychologist. There's an interesting story about how I got into this, but mindfulness is a training of the mind to be present in the moment with a quality of attention that is non-judgmental.
Okay.
So both being present in the moment, we know through Harvard University that the human mind wanders about half the time we're not where our bodies are.
Oh, I can attest to that. Yes. Yes. Every second I feel like my mind is just a million different places. So
yes, exactly. All of us.
Yeah.
And so it's a training to learn how to bring the mind back, but also when we're back to be in a kind of attention that is open, curious, and willing to be with what is. And that's also hard because we are a very judgmental species in general.
Yeah, we really are. And you mentioned being present, and I think that's a word that people don't usually attribute any significance to. It's just like a synonym for, oh, I'm here, I'm present, But how would you actually describe being present? Because, I mean, that's not something anyone really puts too much thought into. It's like, oh, I'm here, yeah, I'm present. But you're not really, not in the true sense of being present. So what is the true sense of being present to you?
I love that question. I think presence to another human being is the greatest gift we can ever give anyone.
Right.
And to really help them be fully heard and seen, to be present for them is what we learn in mindfulness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I ever heard that term was from you. I don't even remember. And I remember just thinking about that, and I was like, what do you mean you're trying to be better at being present? What does that mean? And then you told me, and I thought about it, and I was like, wow, I mean, I think there's a lot of times where I have social interactions with people, and it's like, okay, I'm listening to them, but I'm also thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Did I let my dog out? Oh, do I need to get gas? How much gas do I have in the truck? And stuff like that. And I'm not really 100% there. So the first time I ever heard it was from you. I mean, okay, so Adam, you've been studying mindfulness and being present for a while now. What even set you on that whole, like, what made you want to put more effort into being more mindful and more present?
Well, I definitely remember when I first started college, I remember watching a video. I don't know if it was a Headspace thing or something, but it was some kind of animated video describing mindfulness, and it had some science behind it. It was like, here's the science behind or what we know, like now at this point, about what mindfulness is and what are the benefits. And I was like, wow, it does this, anxiety, depression, ADHD. It helps, veterans. Like, there's so many benefits. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. At least, it paid attention to it. And so that kind of like planted the seed. I didn't start meditating that day or probably years after that, but I remember like hearing about it and listening about it. I was like, wow, okay, fascinating. And then years down the line, I started practicing yoga because of my friend Anthony, who's been on the podcast, who was a yoga instructor. And that kind of brought me into the world. Like, once I started, like that was my first time having a practice, having something that I did every day that, whether I was aware of it or not, brought me into the present moment, brought me into the now. And I was like, okay, focusing on the breath, focusing on the body. And that was my introduction really to like what mindfulness is. And then I started doing meditations through Headspace. It was the first app I ever downloaded because someone recommended it to me, and I started doing it. I did like their first 10 courses, and I would redo them constantly. I did the same courses like over and over again. One, I loved like the animation. It was kind of fun. Yeah. It wasn't serious. I didn't take it too serious. Like, oh, it's cool. I'll just try it. And I just kept doing it. And then I was like, wow, I really like love doing this. Is like I started to enjoy it versus it just being a thing I did. And it was so, and then coming to where we work at RFC, I discovered Ann. I forgot how did I discover you? Maybe I was walking by your office or something.
I think you did, and walked in and said, "What is this?"
Yeah, probably.
I see the meditation mats.
Yeah,
cushions.
Yeah, and so she works here in the same office that we do, and so I went down there, and then she does noon sits, Monday through Friday. She was doing noon sits, but now you're doing them on Facebook. I'm so happy you kept doing it, but I would go in there pretty much every day I could, and do a 30-minute sit. And that was the first time I did more than like 10 or 15-minute meditations. And that really started to, progress. And so it's just been a journey, just constantly learning and being blessed to know people like Ann in my life. And so it's amazing.
It's so interesting because like where we work and where Ann works, it's just like you're in the lobby and all these businesses, they just have like windows for walls and you just look in. Yeah. You just come in the building. If you just randomly, like maybe your doctor's here, maybe your dentist is here, whatever, and you walk in the front door, you look to the right and there's just mats on the floor and people are sitting there with their eyes closed and it's like, what's happening in there? And I've been down there a few times, and I've had the chance to go in there and meditate with you. And the first time I ever meditated was at your office, or Mindful Being, I believe. And it was really weird for me at first because the whole thing is focusing on your breathing. And I never think about breathing. It's just like natural. You're just breathing. But then once you really fixate on it and you like actually start to... I don't know. It's so weird. It's like after the 30 minutes, I feel like I went somewhere else. It was like I was just in my own head, focusing on my breathing, and my mind would wander sometimes, but then I would come back to it. And it's just weird. You never really think about like how many things you feel when you breathe. Like I started noticing like the way the air felt in my nose, and then like the way it felt going into my chest, and like the way my body was contracting and expanding just with breathing. And I was sitting there, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, does this happen every time I breathe? Like I don't remember feeling this thing ever before. Like the air in my nose feeling this way, it just felt so different. So that's kind of when I realized that breathing is a lot bigger of a deal than I've ever made of it before. Like you hear people using the term breath work sometimes and people scoff at it. They're like, what do you mean? I don't need to be taught how to breathe. But I don't think people really realize how important breath is and how much you can control and feel just by breathing. So, I mean, what would you say you have found the importance of breath to be in your studies and like your time being an instructor? What does breath mean to you, and like what is the importance of it?
Yeah, so breath is one of the anchors we use because it's always in present moment and we can always access it, right? It's not always the best one to go to. If you're super anxious, you might be hyperventilating, in which case you'd want to go to hearing or body sensations, another kind of anchor to practice. But breath itself is what unlocks our system of rest and digest. So actually, when we take 3 to 6 long, slow, deep breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale, really blowing out that old stale air, it activates your vagus nerve, which goes from the base of your skull down your spine into your guts, ribcage, and face. And it's the longest nerve of your body.
Wow.
Most of us don't know this. And when it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So your blood pressure drops. You will feel relaxed. You'll have alpha waves of calm in your brain. And so just taking long, slow, deep breaths can bring you immediately into a place of deeper relaxation.
And I feel like that's something that everyone should know, because it's just like, that's such a useful thing for everyone to have in their arsenal. Because, I feel like anxiety is really prevalent right now in like the world we live in today. Everyone is moving so fast paced. And I feel like everyone I talk to is always stressed out about one thing or another. I wish I could have known like years ago or like in college just how deep breathing just naturally calms you down, I would never think about that. And it's never taught to anyone naturally. Like not in school. Like you go to health class and you learn about the different muscle groups in your body and all of that. But none of those nerves or like the effects of breathing are ever taught, at least not where I went to school.
Yeah, it's still fairly, newer to science. And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but still a lot of people are still, even scientists or even doctors and, clinicians are still learning this stuff right now, right?
Yes. So you'd be shocked at how few doctors know this.
Right.
And although they're picking up on it now because of mindfulness. And my husband just went to the doctor recently, and he doesn't generally have high blood pressure, but his blood pressure was a little high. And the nurse said, take some long, slow, deep breaths.
Yeah, nice.
He came home and said, honey, they're doing what you're teaching now in the doctor's offices.
That's incredible. Wow. And so how long ago did you start studying mindfulness and all of that?
I started in 2007, and I am a psychologist. I was teaching at the University of Houston. I trained at UT Med School for my internship and Baylor College of Medicine for my postdoc. So really good training. But in 2006, we had a lot of things happen. Our house flooded. We had to move to an apartment for about 4 months while they were fixing our house. I wasn't sleeping. My mother started having brain seizures and couldn't live alone anymore. My husband was switching jobs. I had a bad health checkup. It was thing after thing after thing, like life does, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it rains and pours sometimes all at once, just a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I started having panic attacks, and I knew what I was having because I'm a psychologist. They're hereditary in my family. My mother had them and gone to the emergency room thinking she was having heart attacks twice, and it was panic attacks. And what we know is that they come down on the DNA, and I can talk about what mindfulness can do.
I would love to talk about that.
So I knew what I was having, and my husband, though, said, honey, I've never seen you like this before, and you're a psychologist. Fix yourself.
Right.
And I was like, I can't. And it ended up, like so many really difficult things, being a blessing in disguise. Because it brought me to my knees, and I happened to find something. It came across my path on mindfulness. And I said to my husband, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to go to it. And he said, I'll pack your bags. If it will help you,
wow.
If it will help you, I'm all over it because I've never seen you like this.
Yeah.
I started practicing intensely after that, never had another panic attack.
Wow.
But I had 2 of them that year that kept me up 4 days. Literally, I was awake for 4 days. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, I first realized that I struggled with anxiety when I was in college, which was, I'm trying to think what year I think it really started. It was maybe 2014 is when I realized, so we're getting close to almost 10 years now. And the first time I had a panic attack, I called my mom just freaking out. I was like, I think I need to go to the ER. I think I'm having like a heart attack or something. which sounded nuts in retrospect because I was like 19 years old and healthy and skinny. I was like, there's no way I'm having a heart attack. But when it was happening, I was convinced I was about to die or something. Yeah. And then when I ended up going to the school clinic, and they were like, well, yeah, we think you were probably just having a panic attack. And I was so angry that that's what they were I was like, no, I know something's wrong with me. Like, don't tell me I'm just having a panic. I know what stress feels like. This is not stress. Like, I was having... like, I need an x-ray, or I want you to look at my heart or do something, because there's no way that you're telling me I was just having a panic attack. And it turns out, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it's such a weird thing to experience for the first time. It's terrifying.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. And your head is spinning where you just can't think straight. Mm-hmm. I was just wide awake. I felt like I was on the ceiling.
Yeah.
My whole body tension. I couldn't relax.
Right.
And my heart pounding, sweating, the whole bit. And it was, it's not fun.
So I'm sure you get a lot of people that come to you that struggle with panic attacks and anxiety. And...
Yes. And one of the things that we use is mindfulness, and it's going down in the moment to ground in what you can see, and describing it in excruciating detail. Like, I am looking at a clear bottle with a blue and white and red band with words on it that say this, and the blue looks like water splashing, and then there are these striped lines, the barcodes, and like you're describing, and then sounds, describing those, describing body sensations until you ground and let go.
Yeah.
That is the key practice if you're in the middle of a panic attack, and I wished I'd known that.
Yeah.
I trained in an anxiety clinic getting my Ph.D. and never learned this.
Wow. That is madness.
So what was, like, from you doing psychology or psychology work, what was the bridge? Obviously, the events and those things that happened in your life really woke you up to what mindfulness can do. What was the next step when you wanted to go get certified and start teaching?
Yeah, so mindfulness, I started learning it. It comes out of Buddhism, actually, but I happen to be Jewish. My partner is Christian, and you don't have to be Buddhist. It is a secular practice. Yes. And I started learning it, actually, and then got called to start teaching it in synagogues.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to teach it. And so I applied and got into UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center in 2015 and got certified there. And I've subsequently been certified through Emory University, or I'm getting certified, almost done, in cognitive-based compassion training, which is related. So I went, to learn it more specifically so I could be an effective teacher. But they won't really take you for these things until you've practiced for a while yourself. You don't just learn this.
Yes.
And it's a training of the mind that is different than the way we usually react. So we're learning to respond in different ways, not in reactive ways.
Yeah.
It's a whole different way of being.
Yeah, it really is. It's like completely alien for a lot of people. Like you don't even think about.
But it's also so human too. At the same time, it's also because how I think of it is like a lot of people become conditioned, and like, this is the society we're raised in. This is the way things operate. This is the way you're supposed to act. This is the way, and like, there's so much of that that's built in or taught that you like, we still have moments, even if someone's never heard of mindfulness or meditation a day in their life, we still have moments of like being in the present moment. We still have those, you go to a musician, an athlete or whatever, like, and they get into these different states of minds, an artist, that I feel like those are definitely states of mind that, that you can reach through meditation and mindfulness. And so, and then also on the fact that I also want to do a guided meditation, if you would like, maybe like 5 minutes or something that way, because obviously we can talk about it all day, but until you experience it, or you know what I mean, then you can actually start to know for yourself. But also like you were talking about Buddhism as well. Sorry, I'm hopping topics here.
No,
I just wanted to get this out now. But like you were talking about, this is a Buddhist, this is taken from Buddhism, and the history of meditation in particular goes way back thousands of years, right?
Thousands.
And many traditions have taught it in different ways. You can go to yogic traditions or Hinduism, Buddhism, you name it. Like there's quite a few, and even in ancient, not ancient, but past like Christian monks, like there's a lot of, they talk about meditation and going out and doing these things.
All religions.
Even in Native American culture, where they would go out into, like they would call in the Japanese culture, they go forest bathing. Like this is taught. This has been known for a long time, and yet we're still just like, I feel like we're so far behind the curve in our culture in the U.S. in particular. And so like I'm really happy that you're teaching it and spreading the word, because like if we just need more people to talk about it and to get it out into the collective consciousness, So yeah, just thoughts I've had.
So the way mindfulness started in America, just so you know, is about 40 years ago, just slightly over 40 years ago, a man named John Kabat-Zinn, who's a microbiologist, was working with pain docs at UMass Med Center. And the docs had patients that were getting lots of drugs, and the docs said, we can't keep giving them meds. They're going to not be able to function. And Kabat-Zinn had studied Buddhism in India, and he thought, what if I took all the religion out of it and just taught the mind-body practices? Would it work? So the docs gave him permission to try, and it worked. And then the cardio docs called him and said, we have these type A personalities that are going to have heart attacks. They're working 24/7. They're, tense all the time. We've given them statins and stents, and they're gonna die if they don't learn how to pull it back.
Right.
He taught them. Again, it worked.
Wow.
And that's when the research started, and it started going across the country.
Right. Man, that's fascinating. Especially in our culture where, we're mainly a Christian is like kind of our number one religion in the U.S. And I love the idea of approaching it from a secular point of view, because so many people can get scared off. Like I know friends personally who wouldn't, practice yoga or do things like that because they have a strong Christian faith and they don't want to be tainted or whatever that is, for them. They don't want to be.
That's my mom. My mom is like a very strong Christian lady. She's like super Christian. And I've told her before, like when I've meditated or when I've tried yoga or stuff like that, and she's like very like apprehensive to hear about stuff like that, because she just thinks yoga and she thinks Hinduism, or she hears meditation and she thinks Buddhism, and she is worried that, is it really Christian to do yoga? Is it really Christian to, and it's like, I never thought of it as, because I've never practiced it in a religious setting, so I've never seen it as that way, but I think millions of people do, which is really interesting.
I've talked to a few pastors and people from the church and asked them about what they thought about mindfulness when I was first getting into it, because I have some friends, and one of the most, I guess, things that stuck with me when I asked one of them, they said, like, what do you think about mindfulness and the practice of it? And they said, well, you want to have something to back it up. Like if you're going to be practicing mindfulness, you want something to like fill it with, and you don't want to be filled with some type of evils or something or some kind of evil spirits or, however that manifests for you, And I thought that was really interesting. But we can go back to, or we can talk about loving kindness meditation, because I feel like in a way mindfulness is a way of like emptying. And then loving kindness kind of like you can fill up that cup with what you want. You know what I mean? Like after you've become quiet and silent and still, and then you can fill it with loving kindness. But it's fascinating. And so, but I love the approach of coming from a secular perspective, because like I feel like it's really important for people to understand that you don't have to subscribe to anything. Nope. It's just simple practice. It's just a practice, just like anything else. You can practice tying your shoes. You can practice dribbling a basketball. It's the same thing, right?
Yep. Yep. So. And it's being used in the U.S. military because of that. They wouldn't do anything religious there.
Right.
And it's being used in schools, and it's being used in professional sports.
They're using it in the military?
Yeah.
Really?
So one of the most amazing stories, I was teaching at one of the med schools here in town, and Admiral McCraven was on campus. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, I do. Yes, very familiar.
Yeah, he's the one who led the troops to find Osama bin Laden. And then he became head of the UT system. And he was speaking to this class where I was teaching and he came in. They told me, just sit down. And he turned around and asked me what I was teaching. And I said mindfulness. And I really did have that thought, he's not going to have a clue.
Right.
And he paused and he looked at these 270 first-year students and he said, let me tell you a story. When I was overseas, I got a call from my doctor that my blood work showed I had a type of leukemia. And he said, for 3 days, I noticed that my mind kept drifting onto my prognosis. And when I am leading the troops, I need to be 110% on the ground. People's lives are in my hands.
Right.
I can't afford a moment of not focusing.
Right.
And he said, I used a combination of mindfulness and hypnosis to train to be fully present. Do not think this is woo-woo from Asia.
Right.
You need to know this. Your patients
Right.
need to know this. This will help
This
you.
is like, picture the most manly American
Yes.
dude you could, I mean,
Yes.
like, seriously.
Yeah.
He just, like, I've obviously never met him, but you have, and he just seems to have this commanding presence. He's like,
Yes.
he gave this commencement speech at UT. You can watch it on YouTube. And he's just like this super impactful, serious person. And just to know that a guy like that is practicing mindfulness and meditation should throw out any apprehension that anyone has about it, because, you know, that stigma around it is completely false.
Yeah.
If Admiral McRaven is doing it, then,
Right.
then
Well-
anyone can do it, you know?
And it got brought into professional sports when Michael Jackson was with the Chicago Bulls.
Jordan?
Jordan.
I'm sorry, Michael Jordan.
I would love to see Michael Jackson on the Bulls.
Moonwalking. Yeah. Michael Jordan was with the Chicago Bulls. So Phil Jackson, who's now
Yes.
the coach of the Lakers, was there, with
Correct.
the Bulls. And he noticed that the players would have all this mind chatter on nights they were off. We're losing the game. What's wrong? I'm cold tonight. Blah, blah, blah. Right? The mind taking them off.
Right.
And he brought in a coach to teach them it's thinking's happening. Come back to feel the ball on your hand, your feet on the floor. Come back into the game because that mind chatter's taking you out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, Phil Jackson is dubbed the Zen Master. Everyone calls Phil Jackson the Zen Master
Yep.
in the NBA. So, yeah, I knew that Phil Jackson was into meditation and mindfulness, and I just think that that's so cool. And a lot of people don't, like, everyone knows Phil Jackson, but I guess they don't really know what made him such a great coach, and it's because he thought about stuff like that. In fact, Pete Carroll, the coach of my favorite football team, the Seattle Seahawks, he brings in yoga instructors to training camp, and he brings in meditation instructors to training camp. And literally, the entire 52-man roster of the Seahawks, they practice meditating and doing yoga.
Yeah.
So you've got these giant, like, 320-pound linemen that are sitting there, like, doing yoga and stuff like that. And it's why they rarely have serious injuries. They, like, their bodies are just really, but also their mind, it has effects that just are really far reaching. I just think that's really cool that it's in sports. The toughest guys in the world are doing that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And we like to think in terms of, especially in our culture, of like, we have to scientifically prove it in order for it to hold any kind of credibility. And so I wanted to talk to you a little about a bit about what the science is showing, what we have learned to this point, and some of the stuff you found.
Yeah, so there are about 6,500 scientific studies so far. That sounds like a lot. It's really not. There are 40,000 studies on exercise in your heart. And those 6,500 studies on mindfulness are involved with ADHD, anxiety, depression, immune system functioning, a whole bunch of different topics. But still, a pretty good bulk of research, and enough so that the federal government is actually sponsoring it. The NIH is paying for it. It is showing that it can improve your immune system functioning. So a study, for example, out of UCLA with people with HIV, their T cell counts, you want to hold that because that's important for immune functioning. And generally, if you're ill, it goes down. They were able to hold steady through mindfulness practice. Anxiety and depression have been found to improve through this. Attention and focus. It's being used with kids with and adults with ADHD. It helps with trauma and overcoming trauma. One of the best apps you can find right now is put out by the Veterans Administration. And it's free to the entire public. It's called Mindfulness Coach.
Okay.
And it has like little classes and then guided meditations, and it doesn't cost anything.
Wow.
Mindfulness Coach.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to download that today. So how interesting is that for you? Like going, I think you said you started in 2007. Mm-hmm. How is it going from 2007, where I'm sure it was way less prevalent to have all this stuff, and then now in 2021 where there's all these apps, and like, is it cool for you to see like how much the, it feels weird saying like fan base, but the base of people that are studying mindfulness and meditating and stuff, like I feel like it must have grown drastically since you started, right? Drastically. And what is that like? I mean, to see something that's so important to you go from being relatively small in the U.S. to being a really growing movement. I mean, that's got to be awesome.
It is awesome. It is very awesome. And it is also very different. So, for example, in 2007, when I started practicing, there were no guided meditations.
Right.
We were told when we were in meditation halls, and I sometimes was on silent retreats for 10 days on a regular basis, to literally watch our minds in silence for 45 minutes. When they drifted, return them. Mm-hmm. And there was a bell rung at the beginning and a bell rung at the end, and that was it. Now we use guided meditations, and we know that most of the science uses guided meditations, and they appear to be equally as effective. Mm-hmm. So, so it's changed dramatically in many, many ways.
That's crazy.
Yeah, people used to think mindfulness, what in the heck is that? Now many people know, although many people are still confused. So it's multi-part. So one of the first things we do is learn how to train the mind to return it to present moment. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you're not going to have thoughts. We don't know how many thoughts the average human has a day. It's somewhere between 20 and 80,000, it appears. But science labs have been all over the board with this, and I don't think they can really tell how to measure it. Whatever.
I can't imagine that.
A lot of thoughts. Let's just take the smallest number, a lot of thoughts a day, right? Mm. And so it's not that you're not going to have thoughts, that you're just going to be blissed out or just empty-headed. Right. It's rather watching the flow of what's happening and just noticing, there's a thought, and just bringing back to focus, returning, or just watching there's a thought and letting it go. Yeah. And just staying present with whatever arises next. Yeah. So it's training the mind for focus and awareness, and to be present also with ourselves. Because many times we live from the neck up, and we are so out of touch with our bodies. Yeah. You know, I can't tell you how many times people walk into my office and they say, I've been walking around with my shoulders up to my ears all day long, and I just now realized I have a shoulder and backache. Right. But they could have realized it all day long and kept dropping, the shoulders and relaxing, but they didn't. And we don't pay attention to emotions until we just lash out, you know, often or something. Where if we would pause and notice, anger's here. It's just that calms the brain. Yes. So that we can say more calmly, you know, I'm feeling angry right now. Yes. Instead of screaming, right?
Because there's times where I feel anger and like it just builds up and it builds up. I don't even remember why I'm angry. Yeah. Or like sometimes I never even notice a reason from the jump. I just know that I'm feeling off, like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed or whatever you want to call it. But then it's like, what even made me feel this way? I don't even know.
You don't even know. And that's what we're doing, really tuning into our experience so we do know what's going on with us, so that we can really know ourselves. Yeah. At the deepest levels.
Right. And like this thing, the mind that we have, is our filter for how we see the world and reality.
Totally.
And so if we're not working on it, or if we're just kind of just letting it do its thing, like we work on so many other things of our life. You know, we budget, we interior design, we, you know, lift weights, work on your body or whatever. Like we try to do maintenance for a lot of things in our life, but many people aren't doing maintenance on their mind. Yeah. Which is such a huge part of who you are and how you experience reality, and this is a way to do it. And so it's, I mean, the applications are endless, and I mean it's simply just creating humans who are more aware of themselves, the people around them. Right. Yes. And it seems so simple, you know, and it seems so obvious. Like I would hope like this is something that we can teach to kids in schools, we can teach to everyone, you know, and it's like, I hate to see so much resistance to it, but now I love seeing, you know, like I love like athletes like LeBron James had a commercial for the Calm app, and so I think that's influencing a lot of younger generations. And you see like other athletes and other people who have a huge influence, and I think that's making change. And so that's amazing to see. But I want to talk more about some of the. We obviously know, like, we have the anchors of breath and sound and body, and like those are some of the foundational, like, beginning points if you want to start meditating. Just simple focus, right? Just being able to focus your mind on one point. And then I want to talk to you more about some of the other things that you add into it, as far as gratitude, compassion, and how that can influence your mind, other than just the focus, and like what kind of role does that play in mindfulness?
So you might remember that I said that it's paying attention to the present moment non-judgmentally, or with open, curious, kind attention.
Which is huge, right?
It's huge.
Huge.
And hard to do.
Yes.
We are a judgmental species. And the way our minds are wired, if you took your hand, put your thumb in your palm and fold your fingers over, you've roughly made a model of your brain. So your forearm is your spinal cord coming up, then your brain stem, but the bottom of your hand, the palm and that curlicue where the thumb is tucked in, that whole area of your brain is old evolutionarily and highly wired. And it is where we have many processes like breathing that we don't have to think about, and swallowing, those kinds of things. But also, it's our threat detector for survival. So the thumb represents your limbic system, where a piece called the amygdala detects threats.
Yes.
And what we know is it's not just physical threats. Yeah, a bear chasing you in the woods, or Harvey floodwaters coming in your house. It is emotional threats, social threats, financial threats, relational. Any kind of threat triggers us very actively. And when we get too triggered, it is metaphorically as if we flip our lids and we can't connect to the front of the brain, which is where it's a newer part of the brain, higher level thinking, impulse control, judgment, and that kind of thing. So what we're learning with mindfulness, because we feel threats all day long for things that aren't threatening.
Yes.
Our brains have not adapted to this century. They used to need to detect, because we had bears coming out of the woods when we were making our log cabins or whatever, right? Or there was going to be a freeze and we weren't going to have crops and we were going to starve.
Yeah, or your village was going to get raided at nighttime or whatever.
Exactly. But that's not true now for most people, right?
You're living in your cushy house, and your biggest, like, stressor is like, oh, my boss is really riding my ass, like you're not really worrying about dying every day, every night, There's, like, you look back in human history, people always talk about, like, how horrible it is today, like, oh, it's so hard to be alive, this is a horrible time to be alive. And then you go back a few hundred years and you think about, like, people are just getting chased by bears, while they're sleeping outside, or, tigers or whatever. People were just coming and burning down villages at nighttime, and it's just like, we got it so good now.
Yeah, there wasn't running water or lights.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean,
so the state you're describing, is this what you would call, like, chronic stress? Like being in a state of, like, chronically stressed
we
throughout
literally
life?
are we're overreacting. So how many times have you lost it in traffic, for example, where you're just going, get out of my way, right? So many people, yes, exactly, are screaming, their bodies are tense. Is that making the traffic go faster? No. Is that making the person in front of you know you're annoyed? No. They're in their car, they don't even know what you're doing. Who is suffering?
Right.
You.
You are.
Right.
You are. And that's what we're doing with so many things, because the mind is saying this is a threat. You're going to get there when you get there, right? And if you're late, and life goes on. But when we get that crazy and act up like that, we're the ones suffering.
Yes.
Or, for example, if we're friends and I pass you in the hallway at work and I don't greet you, what's the first thing you think?
Oh, what the heck was that about? Yeah, you're like...
Yeah? Do you think I'm mad at you?
Yeah.
That's the number one answer people say. So what if I just found out, my husband has cancer and I'm just about ready to cry, or my husband's leaving me, or something's happened, or I'm just zoned out and I look straight at you, but I didn't really see you.
Right.
It had nothing to do with you. You have personalized it. And now you go back to your office going, what the heck was happening to Ann? What,
and you're like,
she mad at me? What did I do?
And you're fixated on that all day. You're thinking about that one interaction in the hall for the rest of your day.
Exactly. it wastes your time, and it's not even true.
Right.
You know, and you're sitting there reliving all the recent moments you had with me, wondering what you could have done or said.
Right.
And I'm not mad at you.
Right.
But we do these kinds of things all the time. What we know is that we don't choose a lot of our thoughts, and that many of our thoughts are not true. They're not grounded in reality.
Yeah.
So mindfulness is teaching us to come back and ground in reality with our thoughts.
I think that's such a common thing. People are constantly personalizing things that aren't even not even remotely close to what they think they are, you know?
Yeah.
We're all just kind of like living in these little bubbles where we think everything is directed at us or everything is like a shot at us somehow. And I have family in New York, and I go to New York relatively often, and people always ask me, like, are people in New York, you know, meaner than people in Texas? And the way I described it, it was like people in New York always seem like everyone is like out to get them in some way. They're like constantly trying to figure out, like, all right, how's this dude out to get me? You know, like, no, you try and strike up a conversation on the street and everyone thinks you're either trying to hustle them or scam them or whatever. Whereas like here, it's a little bit different. But I just think that we have a little bit of that in all of our lives. Like every time someone does something, you're kind of reacting to it as like, okay, how is this directed at me? Oh, he's not texting me the way he usually texts me. What, is he mad at me for something? And then you start thinking about everything you've ever done wrong. You start thinking about like, why is he, you know, acting this way or whatever. So I think it's interesting that we all kind of have a piece of that in our lives. This whole like personalization of things that aren't even related to you.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Yeah. And so what you're saying, Ann, the solution to that is to live in this part of the brain. But not necessarily live in it, but be able to at least be aware that maybe you're not always in this part of your mind, right? Like you're not always. I'm pointing to my mind or to the front of my head. If anyone's listening to this, it's the prefrontal cortex, which is what you described. And in a lot of ways, like this is a state when you're not in like that reactive mode and you're not stressed. Where you're more in like your body. When you get out of your own way, you're more of a state where you can like thrive. Where your body can, when you get out of your own way, a lot of times I find for me personally, I'm more in tune with myself. I find more peace in my life. I'm slower when I do things. I take my time a little bit more. You know, things don't get onto me. Like when things happen, I'm just like, okay, I keep going. You know what I mean? Versus obviously the whole reaction and stuff. And like a lot of the side effects from mindfulness for me personally have been a lot of times I'll walk through like multiple times throughout my day, I'll find moments of like gratitude. Like I'll just look out of a tree, like right here in my office. Like if I look at a tree, I'm like, wow, that tree is so beautiful. I'm so thankful that life exists. I'm so happy that I'm breathing. Like I'll have these little moments throughout my day where it really brings me back to like a good mood. I have good energy. I'm just happier. I'm just, just in my personal state. Right. And I think a lot of that is because of the mindfulness and a lot of the practice I've done, because it kind of like compounds on itself. Like the more I've done it and the more I keep doing it, the more moments I have like this. And it's a beautiful thing and a beautiful practice. And so, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, just noticing nature can give us a moment's respite from, all the stress. But Adam, what you said is really the key for so much of this is getting out of our own way. Not believing the crazy thoughts that cause us to have catastrophize or all or nothing thinking or personalize or the things that the mind does when it's trying to figure out threats. Mm-hmm. And instead just notice, I can't really know why Ann is, walked by on the hallway. And instead of thinking of us, maybe ask, Ann, are you okay? Mm. You walked by me this morning. I'm wondering how you're doing.
Yes.
Turn the focus. The more we focus on us, the worse we feel. Mm-hmm. And mindfulness helps us get curious and focus with curiosity out. You walk by today, you never do that. What's cooking? You okay?
Yeah.
Just...
I think everyone could stand to do that a little bit more. I think everyone could start acting like that, because that would just change everything, Yeah. Instead of internalizing it, really just redirect that whole energy and just figure out, like, is that person okay, which
Yeah.
I'm guilty of not doing that all the time. I'm guilty of thinking stuff is like, shit, what did I do wrong?
I mean, everyone is, and that's
Yeah.
a part of the human experience, right?
It is for all of us. And we're really learning to retrain the mind through this.
Yes.
Where we question and we get curious instead of jumping to false conclusions.
Yes.
You know, nobody's waking up in the morning trying to make our day bad.
Right.
You know, they're trying
Hopefully.
to be they're trying to be happy
Right.
and to avoid pain themselves, right? We all are doing the same thing. We're trying to be happy and safe and feel good and to avoid pain and discomfort.
Yeah.
And we're all doing it in different ways. And sometimes we do it less skillfully, sometimes more. But they didn't wake up to make your day awful.
Right.
You know, they're doing the best they can. And what we're doing in mindfulness is also understanding that. It doesn't mean we don't address needs, because that's part of mindfulness too, is getting in touch with a deeper need. But it could be, instead of, for example, you know, if you say something really sharp, you mentioned the boss riding you.
Right.
You know, I could notice, for example, wow, you know, boss, are you needing right now a little bit more support? Are you
Right.
feeling pressured?
Right.
Is that what's going on with you? And give you a chance to talk about what's happening, because maybe your boss is raining on your head.
Right.
Right? So it's just coming all the way down.
Chain effect, yeah.
Yeah. So how can I be more supportive in this? Or can you help me prioritize? What's the priority need here? Or is there more communication really needed?
Yeah.
Are we missing communication? Like you're having expectations and I'm not hearing it that way. So we can also listen and ask questions that
Right.
are more helpful and conducive to better conversations.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Would you like to lead or
Yeah,
guide a
sure.
short meditation? It can be
Sure.
5 minutes or however long. but-
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. You down for
yeah.
that, Tom?
Sure. I'm always down.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So what I think I'd like to do, because I had trouble following my breath at the beginning, I'd like to switch anchors on people and let them try a few different anchors
Sure.
so they can see. But what we're doing with mindfulness initially to train focus is just like what we do with the body. So if we were going to train a muscle in our arm, we would get a weight and we would do flexus. We'd flex our muscle, right? Hello. What's the word I'm trying to get here? Curls.
Curls, yeah, bicep
Thank you.
curls.
Curls. Bicep curls. Thank you. Bicep curls. It's the same thing. You're on the couch. You don't really want to do it, but you want to get that muscle in your arm. So you go get the weight and you do the curls. It's the same thing with mindfulness. What you're going to notice is that your mind drifts. That's natural. And you're going to just notice thinking's happening and then come back to focus on whatever object you've chosen for focus. What we know is this grows gray matter and synaptic connections in 8 of the newer parts of the brain, including areas of memory, self-awareness, higher level thinking, all the key areas.
Compassion.
Yes, yes. So we want to flex the muscle back to be aware when we realize, oops, I'm drifting. Come back here. So that's what we're going to be doing in this practice.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So when you get into a mindful body, you want to be grounded. You could be sitting cross-legged on the floor. You could be lying flat on a bed or a couch. You could be sitting up in a chair, but you want to feel grounded. Your feet, if you're sitting in a chair, should be flat, touching the floor or something that your feet are on. Your hands resting in your lap. Your chin should be slightly tucked. You don't want your head flopped forward or backwards because you want the breath flowing freely. And then eyes can be closed or gazing downward softly. If you gaze down, don't focus in. You don't want to create any tension in your eyes. So beginning now with some long, slow, deep breaths that we talked about in the beginning, and I'll count us. Breathing in through the nose for the count of 3, holding for 2, out of the mouth for the count of 5. Ready? Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And now breathing naturally in and out through your nostrils. Notice how your body feels and how your mind feels. Hopefully you are relaxed. We practice with relaxed bodies, alert minds. Inviting you now to focus on the breath in your nostrils. As you breathe naturally, you may notice that you don't have to do anything. The body breathes itself. And you may be noticing variations of temperature, fullness and emptiness, tingling, or other sensations. And if mind wanders, just notice thinking and come back to feeling your breath at the nostrils. Now inviting you to notice your breath at the chest. A rhythmic rising and falling. It's already happening naturally. Most of the time you're not even aware of it. And you might notice heartbeat or other sensations. See if you can focus on the feeling of breath. And now noticing the breath in your belly. Again, rising and falling, expanding and contracting. Breath by breath. And you might feel hungry, full, gurgling, other things happening in the belly. But again, focus on breath. Choose the location, the nose, chest, or belly, where your breath feels most pleasant or easiest for you to follow. And focus your attention there, one breath at a time. You can either get curious about feeling the breath, or you can count your breaths. Inhale, exhale, 1. Inhale, exhale, 2. Counting 1 to 10, and then coming back to 1. It doesn't matter which one you use. The key is noticing when mind drifts. And it will. Labeling it thinking and coming back to feeling the breath in the area you've chosen. Notice where you are, and if your mind has drifted, gently but firmly return to the breath. We're just noticing thoughts and letting them pass. And now taking a long, slow, deep breath at your own pace. Now I'm going to invite you to just listen. You may hear sounds from outside, cars passing, dogs barking, other noises. Sounds from inside, people talking, buildings squeaking, footsteps, or sounds from within your body. When we use hearing as anchor, we don't search for the sounds. We rest awareness on hearing, observing as sounds arise and pass. And when our mind drifts, not if, when, we notice thinking and come back to just listening. Have you left your body? Notice if you are just listening. Again, if mind's taking you away, notice thinking and come back to just hearing, listening. And now taking a long, slow, deep breath at your own pace. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. So what was your experience, guys?
I feel really,
Calm?
I just feel like really calm right now. I don't know, really still. I've never anchored on hearing before. I've only meditated a few times and I've always used breath. But I was, like, I could subtly hear my own heartbeat. It was really weird. I was like hearing things I'd never, I mean, like, obviously I can hear the AC in the room and stuff like that. But just like little, like, internal, like, body sounds I was hearing, which was really kind of a weird experience. I'd never picked up on that before. It was really nice. I feel really good right now. That's good.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that for us, Ann. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that was awesome being able to do that on our
It was
on our
really
show.
cool. And I think you have some content on your website, right? Don't you have some? I think Adam said maybe you post some videos there.
Yeah. And we do Facebook Live every day, and those are posted for a while too. It's Mindful Being is the site on Facebook Live.
And we'll put a link in the podcast description so that people can definitely check it out for sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We know now that, it appears that training the mind for about 20 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks actually causes changes in the brain for the better.
Wow.
So it's a practice.
It's just crazy to me that that's not taught more. That's not common knowledge.
We do know the brain is plastic, right?
Yes.
And when you say plastic, meaning that it can mold and shape.
Like it's malleable,
you can create new neural pathways.
That's where that term came. I haven't heard it in a long time, but I remember Sosa said it on episode 1, neuroplasticity,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess that's where that comes from.
Yes.
Then?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I had one question, especially for the person who, like say they're a mom, they have kids, live extremely busy lives, and they say, okay, I don't have time to sit and do nothing, if you will, or practice mindfulness. What would you say to that person?
I would say when you are doing anything, use that as a practice. So, for example, when you're washing the dishes to clean them up after dinner, instead of having your mind go off to a million different places, just feel your hands in the soapy warm water. Look at the suds, smell the smells. Mm-hmm. Notice when your mind drifts and come on back. Same thing when you're driving. So often we get to a location and we realize, oh my gosh, I didn't even see the road, or I missed my turn 3 exits back, or something like that, because we were zoned out, right? We weren't in our cars. Right. And the amazing thing is we can function that way, but it's better to be in your car. So just practicing being in your car, literally when your mind drifts, coming back to feel your hands on the steering wheel, feel your body on the seat, feel your feet on the pedals, look at the sky, look at the colors of cars in front of you. Stay present in your car. When mind drifts, come back. Same thing when you're exercising, any kind of movement. Can you stay in your body? Yoga is a form of mindfulness. Brushing teeth, noticing the arm movements, the taste, the smell. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're either doing it mindfully or mindlessly.
Yeah.
And those can be little breaks for us to get off of ourselves and our problems.
Yes.
And literally just enjoy the moment. I mean, I do it showering, and most mornings I come out of the shower and say to my husband, we are so blessed to have warm, clean water.
Oh my God, yeah.
All I do is feel it on my skin and the smell of the soap, and it's like I'm in heaven in my shower.
Right.
Right. And when my mind leaves the shower, I invite the, people into the shower mentally. Nope, right now I'm taking a shower by myself. Just here, feeling the water, feeling the soap, just enjoying the experience, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I noticed that. I go camping a lot. And every time I go camping, the first thing I want to do when I come home is just take a shower, just wash it all off. And when I'm in the shower, I always think what would I do if I couldn't just take a shower? It's just so cool. Just the idea of just having hot running water, it just feels amazing. It's like such a wild thing just to be able to just go into this little special area in your house and you just nice warm water with whatever your favorite soap and all that. And you just come out and you just feel like a brand new person. Yeah. It's like the best feeling in the world.
And Adam mentioned gratitude, and that's what happens when we pay attention.
Yes,
how lucky am I to have this shower?
Seriously.
I mean, it's one of the gifts of my day. How lucky am I to have a car? To have dishes, to have all, just everything.
Yeah.
And to have food when you're eating.
Yes, to be mindful about our food and not just snarf
So
it
many
down.
people, they just eat it so fast. Or fast food, they'll just grab it. You speed into the little drive-through alley, then you pull it out of a window, then you eat it while you're driving down the freeway worrying about work. You don't even think about the fact man, I ate something today, which is something millions of people can't say they did. So
Right.
It's just you don't even really think about how the food tastes or what you're even eating. It's just this is just sustenance. I'm just cramming it in my face.
Yeah.
But actually taking a minute to reflect on just being grateful that you have food to eat.
Yeah.
Everyone should be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and savor it.
Yeah.
So enjoy every bite. Go slow down.
Yeah. So I had a pretty deep realization. Again, my friend Anthony Sosa, who he's now teaching something called neurosculpting, and I don't know if you've heard of it, Ann, but it's really fascinating. It's fairly new, and he's working with this woman in Boulder who kind of like started it, and like her not necessarily started it, but is like has her own thing going, doing neurosculpting and neurofeedback, where they're like scanning the brain and trying to see what parts of the brain are doing what. And there was this one. There's a few techniques you do where it's basically implementing creativity and imagination into your mindfulness practice. So it's pretty fun because you can do like really cool things in your mind where you can basically like create your oasis is one of them. Yeah. Where like you're basically creating your oasis in your mind, whatever that is for you, a beach, mountains, whatever, right? And kind of like making it very vivid in your mind, feeling it. What would it feel like to be there, and all these things, right? And it kind of made me realize, like, going back to what you're talking about, how you come out of the shower and you're like, wow, I feel amazing. Like, not everyone has that experience, and why is that? And I feel like it's because people, basically in a lot of ways we create our own reality, right?
Yes, we do.
And like in a way, like I don't want to get anyone upset or mad, but like in a way we're kind of our own gods in a way. You know, not necessarily. I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to go down that road, but I'm just saying, like in a way, like we create a reality, right, for ourselves. And when doing this is basically we're creating a new perspective, a lens, something that we can turn on and off as we please, to step into a new reality or to just experience your day differently. Yeah. And it's a pretty empowering thought, you know, to understand that, wow, I really do have the power to change my reality and the way I react with people, the way I react with myself. I can change that. Like that's literally, and I think you've brought it up too. And we've mentioned the guy on the podcast. What's the man who was in the concentration camps?
Victor Frankel.
Victor Frankel.
I was just thinking about saying that.
Because he says it so perfectly in the fact that we don't have control over a lot of things, but we do have control over our thoughts and the way we want to react or be in a certain situation.
Yes.
And it's just powerful. It's extremely powerful.
So what Adam's referring to is Victor Frankel, who was the survivor of 3 concentration camps.
Oh, my God.
Yes. Who was also a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist, he observed during this time of being in these horrific places, right? That between the stimulus and the response is a space. And in that space is our freedom to choose and our power, right? And that is true. He saw people, you know, instead of grabbing at the bread, choosing to give it to somebody who needed it more, or, you know, maybe they thought they weren't going to make it through the day, so somebody else would have a chance, or whatever it was. Make wise choices at different times, even though they were being treated as, you know, prisoners and slaves, right? And but they still had the power to choose if they just paused, and it gave them freedom. That somehow I can still act like I want. I'm going to give this, or I'm going to do this. You know,
it's profound.
Yeah, it's really profound.
Really
it's
is.
Profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another, I mentioned early on, I'm Jewish. One of the other rabbis I read regularly is the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. And again, they were crammed in like sardines, you know, 72 people in an apartment or something ridiculous. I mean, hardly, you know, crazy stuff before they were exterminated, right, and or taken out. But, you know, he wrote a book on conscious community. And it's all about how we have choice and we can be conscious in every moment of our lives, even the difficult ones. And I think, wow, if somebody can write this in the midst of that, I mean, my day is rocking compared to those people. I mean, you know, I'm not a prisoner. I'm a, you know, and And mindfulness is freeing us from things that are making us prisoners.
Right.
Like you mentioned so early on about, you know, thinking we need to be a certain way or wear certain clothing or do what other people want us to do. No, we're here to be ourselves,
Yeah.
Right.
our best selves.
Right.
And if that means I wear a different brand that no one else likes because I like it, great, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
But we need to feel good about that,
Yeah.
where we're just not feeling like our lives are being dictated by other people.
Yes. 100%.
And it's interesting. I wanted to talk about this, and I'm glad that you mentioned, you know, mindfulness and all of that in the face of strife and extreme circumstances, because I heard that one of the things you did was, I guess you went with UNICEF to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria in 2018, which I'm sure most people who are listening to this podcast remember. I mean, Hurricane Maria wasn't that long ago. It completely devastated Puerto Rico. I mean, they were without power for... And how long? It was months, right? I mean, it was, months. I mean, they didn't have basic supplies. Like, you know, people were dying in hospitals because life support machines had failed and things like that. So you went there and you were teaching mindfulness to people in Puerto Rico that were going through some stuff I probably can't even imagine in my wildest dreams. What was that like?
Yeah, it was really humbling. And once more, I got a whiff of how much we all take for granted. So one of the men in the class, and it was physicians, teachers, it was a mixed group, school counselors, community workers, a mixed group of people. But one of the men said to me, I didn't have lights or electricity for 6 months. And when my lights came on, I didn't want to turn them off. I wanted to just keep looking at it. Wow, look,
Lights.
It's light.
Yeah.
I have lights. And you know what? They're miracles.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine how we would be living if we didn't have water and lights
No.
and the things that we...
When we had the winter storm back in February, and lights, I value those, and I realize, like, you know, how important those are. So when we lost them, I was like, well, yeah, I don't really take these for granted. But it was the running water for me that I realized how much I took for granted. Like, we didn't even want to cook because you literally could not wash your dishes. You couldn't shower, so you always felt miserable all the time. And it was just like I was flushing my toilet with buckets of water from the pool, and I was just like, I never thought about how, like, just blessed I am to have running water. How lucky we are to live in a country where everyone just has running water, and hot running water at that. So, I mean, in a place where they were living like that for months, I mean, for me, that was just like 72 hours I didn't have running water. But for them, months with no electricity or running water or any of that stuff. So I can't even imagine. I literally cannot imagine.
Yeah, it was very humbling. It really was, to hear how much they had suffered. And you know, but they were such a resilient people, and the laughter was huge. They really did laugh, and you could see the love among them, you know, of we're here supporting each other, we're going to get through this somehow. And that is what carries us through, right?
Yes.
Yep.
The laughter and the love.
100%.
Yep.
But I think that's so cool. There's something so human about, like, that group of people that went, I mean, from people teaching mindfulness to, like, community workers and just things like that. The idea of, like, sending a relief group of people down there from all walks of life, that's actually really cool. I mean, that's such a human, like, it takes a village to move forward together, like all of us coming together, all walks of life coming together to get through some sort of hardship. It's just awesome to me.
Yeah.
It's like I just love humans. I love human beings for that reason. I think that's so cool.
It is cool.
I think that's really cool.
So one of the things we're learning to do, we all have such a self-critical voice, too.
Oh, yeah.
Beating ourselves up. You know, you stupid idiot, why did you do that? Kind of thing, right? You've been there, done that.
Yeah,
we all
I
have.
say that to myself probably like 5 times a day, 10 times a day.
And what we're learning to do in mindfulness is to really begin to speak to ourselves like a best friend would speak to us. We'd never say, if you and I were best friends, I wouldn't say to you, you idiot, you know, but we'd say this to ourselves. You know, but what would I say to you if you were distressed? I'd probably say, you know, you're going to figure it out. You're working on it. It's gonna happen. Or how can I support you? Or, you know, you're going to speak in a way that is helpful, not hurtful. We know this kind of criticism only hurts us. We do worse when we criticize ourselves, not better.
Yes.
Yeah. It's actually funny. I
I've been doing that with my girlfriend a lot lately because she has like one of her best friends whose name is Hannah. Hannah, maybe you're listening to this. Whenever my girlfriend is stressed out about something or she's beating herself up, I'm like, hey, stop. Treat yourself the way Hannah would treat you.
That's mindfulness.
And like, I never even thought about it as being mindfulness, but like, and it always makes her laugh because Hannah is just like the sweetest person we know. And it always just makes her laugh to think about like what Hannah would want for her. But I'm like, hey, treat yourself the way Hannah would treat you. And it almost always like completely just fixes whatever's going on in her head. So that's really interesting. I never thought about that. I never labeled that as mindfulness, but yeah, it is. And it's really cool. It's really cool to think about like the way we treat ourselves compared to how our friends treat us. And it's just like, that's how you should be treating yourself, ultimately.
Exactly. And how we, hopefully can treat other people too, even when they're not acting skillfully, to understand they're doing the best they can. They're having a bad day for whatever reason. Give them the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We're trying to soften our approach to life.
Right. That falls under compassion, right?
Yes.
And this is where like, she's doing the and I'm doing a training session with you right now, CBCT, cognitively based compassion training, and that's really opened my world up too as well, of just trying to create more, at least so far from what I've taken from it, is really just trying to create more moments of nurturance in my life, like just finding those little moments to create like a love and peaceful environment for myself and others around me, and it's very powerful.
Yes, it is very powerful. And even when we're suffering with real things like floods and damage to the house, to be able to literally take care of ourselves like we would parent a child, with loving kindness, gentleness, to just say, yeah, this is hard. It would be hard for anyone. You're doing the best you can. May you accept yourself just as you are, perfectly imperfect, just like everyone else. Doing the best you can like everyone else.
Yeah.
And not beat ourselves up. Be tender towards ourselves.
Right.
So, Ann, could you train my child whenever I have a baby? You can. Can you imagine like if every child was taught this? Like, you know what I mean? At a young age, just those simple words, like, and how much it could change you.
I was thinking about this earlier before the podcast, and I was thinking about like, when do you think a child can begin practicing stuff like that? Like, I mean, because my mom is a preschool teacher, and so she teaches like 3 and 4-year-olds. When could a child begin thinking about mindfulness and practicing meditation? And I mean, is it even possible to make a kid sit still for that long?
It's a natural ability, and actually, little kids are more mindful than we are. Just think about it. When you're little, you want to check out everything. Yes. You're going and putting your hands on things, touching them.
Putting your hands in the dirt. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to look at the ants as they're going into how do they do that? How do they? What is happening? And the parents are saying, "Come on! It's just ants. It's just ants."
Wow.
The kids are the ones that are mindful in the moment with curiosity, right? And trying to explore. So we want to encourage that with kids. Exploration is good. Explore your world. And these ants are not the same as the ants tomorrow. They're going to be doing something different. Right. It's a guarantee. We're doing something different all the time, right? So we want to encourage that. But then as kids begin to get a little bit older, 5 and 6 years old, even then they're starting the negative self-talk. Oh, I'm so stupid. Johnny is smart at school, and I'm at preschool, and I'm not. And all this negative self-talk. And to be able to teach them, no, we all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. You're doing the best you can. And it's good enough right now, right? Yeah. It's good enough.
Yeah.
And just, be more accepting. And it's odd. The psychologist, Carl Rogers, said, when I accept myself just as I am, the paradox is then I can change.
Yeah.
The paradox, I accept myself just as I am, then I can change.
Yeah.
It's funny, we're fighting ourselves, and it's just this resistance. Yeah. But when we quit fighting, it's like we want to do better. We want to change. We love ourselves more.
Yeah.
And it happens more naturally.
It's the simple step of becoming aware.
Yes.
Becoming aware of yourself, where you are in that moment. And I think that's the vehicle for change, right?
Totally.
Once you're aware and you're in that moment, you're just totally aware of what's happening or what you're going through, then you can begin to make steps forward, right?
Choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, I know we're kind of wrapping up
Yeah,
here.
we're
kind
about
of getting to where
we're about an hour 20. I don't want to take any more of your time.
Wow. So the last thing I wanted to ask you, I originally wrote down some questions for you, and the first thing I was going to ask you was, what's the longest you ever meditated? But a while ago, you were telling a story about how you were doing a 10-day silent retreat. What was that like? Were you just completely silent for 10 days?
Yes, you
that
are.
Is
you are
nuts to me.
You are silent for 10 days.
I cannot even imagine. I don't even know if I could do like half a day, but 10 days.
I've done many of these now.
Really?
They actually nurture me, but they're not for everyone. I don't want to say mindfulness isn't even for everyone. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Find another way. But it works for lots of people. And this is when, even though I had a Ph.D. in psychology, this is when I learned about the mind. Watching my own all day, every day without talking.
Right.
You realize the amount of drivel that comes out of your mouth.
Right.
The things you want to respond to that are so unnecessary.
Right.
The things that you miss because you're gabbing and thinking. It just changes everything. So in a silent retreat, there usually is a morning teaching and an evening teaching and an afternoon check-in. And during those periods, you can ask the teacher a question. But you can only speak directly to the teacher. Like, I'm really struggling right now. My mind keeps going off to the same thing, and I just don't know how to get it off this thing. What would you recommend, teacher? Like that kind of question, okay? But there's no crosstalk with any participants. And the first time I was having lunch, because it's a silent lunch, I bit into an apple, and I thought it sounded so loud. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I've never really heard an apple before. I mean, it's just amazing. You just become aware in different ways.
So cool.
It's amazing.
Wow. So, and then are there meditation sessions? So that's the teaching sessions you're talking about, right? Like inside the...
And then in between, you are doing sitting and walking meditation.
Okay.
45 minutes of sitting, 45 minutes of walking, breakfast. 45 minutes of sitting, 45 minutes of walking, class.
Right.
And then whatever like that.
So then what's the actual... Like, what's the longest single session you've ever meditated? What do you think?
Well, I've meditated for hours, you know.
Because, 30 minutes feels like a lot to me. Like, I've done 30 minutes, and it takes so much to, like, focus for 30 minutes for me. Like, it just feels, like, so alien to me. So, hours. If 30 minutes is hard, hours just seems like... I don't think I'm ready. I'm definitely not ready for hours. Yeah.
So, again, it's something that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
For me, it is a huge awareness practice because you really get to see your mind in action. And there's no respite. So... but yeah, I move between sitting and walking. And does my mind wander? Sure. It's going to wander.
Yeah.
But I notice and bring it back, and, it's just a practice. But for me, it's really something I look forward to every year, my annual silent retreat.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to do something like that, we have a couple locations that people can go to, right? I think there's the Houston Zen Center.
Yeah.
And a couple other places, right, that are probably in the Houston kind of area. And I've actually done one day, I guess you would call it half a day, because I was there in the morning at like 5 a.m. or something, whenever you get there. And then you leave at night, and it's a silent meditation. So anyone can do it if you ever just want to experience, or if you just want to go do a sit. They do sits as well, right?
Right.
When I say sit, they just do like a guided meditation or just a silent meditation.
Silent meditation. There, if you're going there. But
Right.
a lot of the different retreat centers where you go, they may have a picture of the Buddha out, but they will not be bowing to Buddha anyway. It will be strictly training and mind-body practice and using that kind of thing. So you may see a picture of a Buddha.
But there's no
But
religious...
again, there's no religion in many of these. You just have to find the right retreat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can wrap it up. It's a great place to wrap it up. And if people want to reach you or get to know more about what you do, where would they go?
So my company is Mindful Being, and feel free to call 713-636-9375. Right now, we're not in person. Hopefully, we're going to be going back to in person. But I do a lot of teaching on Zoom with corporations, with schools, with individuals, families, kids. Love working with teenagers, probably my favorite group. So I'd love to be of assistance to anyone who might be interested in learning.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Do you have anything you want to wrap up, Tom?
No, I think that was great. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like I learned some new stuff, and I'm kind of just ready to like try and be mindful on my drive home, I guess. Yeah. So okay. All right. Well, until next time, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Midnight Variety Hour. Be mindful, be present, meditate, and go eat an apple. Until next time, this has been the Midnight Variety Hour. Stay safe out there in the cosmos.
All right. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.